Good afternoon and welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the supply chain capital of the East Coast, Atlanta, Georgia. Today's episode is presented by APICS Southeast District, APICS Providence Chapter, and APICS Savannah Chapter. We welcome all of the APICS members and guests joining us around the globe this afternoon. My name is Scott Luton. I serve as your host for today's session. I also serve as a volunteer on the APICS Southeast District staff. So what is APICS, you ask? Well, we'll provide a background on that in just a moment. Our session today will focus on the fundamentals of lean and its application in supply chain. We'll be offering a wide variety of proven tools and concepts that will improve your organization's performance. We'll be featuring Geoff LeRoy, who currently serves as president of both the APICS Savannah and APICS Providence chapters. More about Geoff in just a moment, but as always, we're glad to have you with us today. So let's tackle our ground rules. All attendees will be on mute as we're looking to optimize the audio experience. Now, with that said, let's make it as interactive as possible. Please do submit your questions via the chat toolbar. We'll answer as many as we have time for at the conclusion of today's webinar. Finally, a PDF of today's presentation and the recording will be sent out in the next few days to each of our registrants. As I mentioned, today's webinar is brought to you by APICS Southeast District, a team of volunteers that support about 30 APICS chapters throughout the southeastern United States. For those of you new to APICS, we are the premier industry association dedicated to end-to-end supply chain management. Our organization offers membership and professional development, a wide range of education opportunities, industry-leading research and publications, and widely recognized professional certifications. But more than anything else, APICS is about people. Our organization has over 45,000 members in over 100 countries. APICS has 195 North American chapters that serve a wide variety of key geographic markets, including our newest chapter in the dynamic logistics market of Savannah, Georgia. You may recognize our leading certifications, such as our CPIM, our CSCP, and our CLTD. If you want more information on how we can serve you or your organization, please feel free to reach out to us on the APICS Southeast District staff. We're happy to help. You can also find out more information on our organization at apics.org. Okay, so let's share a little more information about our speaker today. You're all in for a treat. Geoff LeRoy has been specializing in supply chain management for the manufacturing, service, and distribution industries for more than 30 years. He has worked in a variety of areas of the business, including international procurement, global logistics, production planning, inventory management, engineering, distribution, and even customer service. Geoff has incorporated continuous improvement and lean practices in his professional positions since early in his career. Currently, he serves as the general manager for a medical services company, the president of APICS Savannah, and the president of APICS Providence chapter. He is an active instructor and educator in the fields of lean, supply chain management, materials management and procurement, and production and inventory control. Geoff holds a bachelor's degree in engineering with a concentration in metallurgy from Lafayette College and a master's in business administration from Bryant University, his MBA. He also holds several APICS certifications, including CSCP, CPIM, and CLTD. Geoff has been consulting and educating and training organizations in conjunction with various APICS chapters for more than 20 years, and has recently received several Instructor of the Year awards, including as recent as 2016. For the last 12 years, Geoff has served on several chapter boards as both president and vice president of education. He is currently certified by APICS as an instructor in the areas of CPIM, CSCP, CLTD, and Lean Enterprise. Geoff has also mentored countless students and professionals while assisting them in achieving their personal and professional goals. Finally, on a personal note, I can tell you it's been a pleasure collaborating with Geoff to start the new APICS Savannah chapter, which became official earlier this year. With all that said, here's Mr. Geoff LeRoy.
Well, thank you everyone for attending. And Scott, thank you very much for those kind words. And it's a pleasure for me to be in front of you today to talk to you about lean manufacturing and the essentials. Today's agenda, we first will talk about what is lean and what it's about. We'll talk about the key principles of lean, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the key concepts behind lean, such as value stream mapping, the 8 deadly wastes, and the house of Toyota, and then some other incremental key lean concepts. And then we'll move to Geoff's 9 steps to lean success. And then we'll follow up with a conclusion and question and answer session. So what is lean? One thing you should know about myself is I'm a simpleton. I always like to try to simplify not just processes, but also body of knowledge so it can be communicated much more effectively. I have conducted and participated in hundreds of lean, continuous improvement, and Kaizen events over the years. And today's goal is to convey some of my experiences to you and how you can benefit by bringing lean into your organization and into your own personal lives. So what is lean? At a very high level, it's a philosophy that is going to focus on flowing value to the customer, in part by eliminating waste from all processes. Another key element is to right-size the resources that are involved. This includes machines, material, people, and time. Additionally, lean has to provide the tools for the workers and the people to continually improve their work. And there are a variety of ways that we will accomplish all of these 4 goals. So, what is lean? We like to consider it somewhat of a new term. When I say somewhat of a new term, you've probably heard this used in conjunction with Lean Six Sigma or Six Sigma Lean. It has been around, or at least many of the concepts and tools have been around for quite some time, including derived from the Toyota production system. The main concept behind lean, which I all want you to take out of this webinar, is to eliminate waste. And waste is identified that anything is not adding value from the customer's perspective. And the great thing about lean is it doesn't cost much. It just takes a little bit of time and effort. And the return on investment, or the payback, is very substantial and very quick. So when I go to organizations where I've been asked, why should we implement lean, or why do we want to take or embark on the lean challenge, there are a lot of positive benefits. And this list is not inclusive, but let me just go through them. First of all, it increases an organization's velocity. It makes things happen quicker. It makes the organization more nimble, more flexible, and will create a competitive advantage. It also decreases an organization's working capital and increases its cash flow. It also has a positive effect of increasing your inventory turns. And the last 3 bullets certainly are key for an organization when they're looking to create a competitive advantage in the marketplace. It helps them gain market share, increase profitability, and also meet customer demand. The other reason why I emphasize lean to organization is that it has a positive effect for management, the organization, and for all shareholders. So let's start off by talking about the 5 key lean principles that will drive continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is a key concept in lean. So first of all, we need to specify what creates value from the customer's perspective. Customers want to make sure they receive what they're paying for, but they don't want to pay for anything that they don't need. Also, we need to identify all the steps across the whole value stream. And we'll talk in a minute about what a value stream is. All of the actions and processes that we're looking at through the lean improvement, we want to try to create flow. And the whole goal is to move towards one-piece flow. That does not happen overnight. It's a journey with incremental improvements. And we do not create anything in excess. We're only making what is needed or what is pulled by the customer. We call that a pull-based philosophy or pull-based replenishment. And finally, we always strive for perfection by continually removing successive layers of waste. Once you do a lean improvement project, you will finish it, hopefully, with positive results, and then you'll step back and look at the next area where you want to improve. So it is a never-ending circle of life, so to speak, with lean. Let's talk a moment about what a value stream is. A value stream is all of the activities, both value-added and non-value-added, from raw material to finished goods, from taking our orders to receiving cash, and from concept to product launch. It encompasses all three of these main areas. We'll eventually talk a little bit about value stream maps, which is an evolution from workflows or process flows or flow diagrams. Another key concept about lean that we've talked briefly about is the elimination of waste. And here are the 8 deadly waste. If we go back about a decade or less than that, there used to only be 7 deadly waste. The most recent one added is unused people skills. And as a manager and an executive, the one thing I always emphasize to my organization is to utilize all the resources we have at our disposal. So let's review these 8 deadly wastes quickly. The first one is overproduction. Certainly do not want to produce anything that is not needed by the customer. This includes equipment running when you don't have any demand. Historically, with organizations and production managers, they like to keep their equipment running. That is against the lean principle. Another deadly waste is waiting. If something's waiting to be moved or building up in WIP, that is considered a waste. Transportation, such as long moves or storing before you need it, is also considered a waste. Processing also is another waste, such as scrap or wrong tools. Inventories, such as excessive safety stock. Motion, such as excessive walking or looking for tools. Defects, as we all know, is a significant waste, such as adding value or resources to repair, rework, or replace, or inspect is considered waste. And as I mentioned, the unused people skills. These are the 8 categories of waste. The other key concept where lean was developed was from the Toyota production system, and it's based on this House of Toyota. This House of Toyota is basically a framework for lean developed by a Toyota engineer. It summarizes the aspects of the Toyota production system. These are all the key characteristics of this house model which you are viewing now. So if we take this house and we look at it from a very high perspective, I want my house to have a very sound base and foundation. So if we look at the foundation, it consists of standardization and operational stability. Operational stability occurs when variation in systems is reduced, and standardization is one way to do it. So our foundation consists of standardized work, Kanbans, 5S, and Junka, and TPM. The house is held up by 2 pillars. One pillar is just in time, and the other pillar is Jidoka. JIT is partly related to takt time, and that may be a new term for some of you. Takt time relates to the rate of customer demand, and it is considered to be the heartbeat of any lean system. What we want to do as we implement lean is to make sure all of our process in our organization is running at that lean heartbeat, at the takt time, at the rate of customer demand. So flexibility becomes very important with this lean concept. Jidoka is a term, Japanese term, for empowering employees. It was originally utilized in Japan to empower employees to stop the production line when a defect occurs or having it stop automatically. This is empowering the employee. In the center of the house is a culture of continuous improvement. This is a cultural churn for an organization. It has to include employee involvement, such as Kaizen. For those of you that don't know, Kaizen is the Japanese word for continuous improvement. We also want to empower employees and make sure that we provide them a safe work environment, and morale is very high. That is very key from a Japanese perspective in Japanese organizations. The roof is basically high quality, low cost, and short lead times, which are achieved by eliminating waste. So that is the output of our lean organization. This is the House of Toyota. Again, it is the framework for lean developed by Toyota years ago. Let's talk a little bit more about key lean concepts. We talked briefly about waste, and lean is almost synonymous with the elimination of waste in all forms. We talked briefly about takt time, which is the rate of customer demand. We want our organization and our processes to be flexible in order to meet our takt time and to change to whatever the rate of customer demand may be. We want our processes and organization to move towards a one-piece flow and utilize pull-based replenishment. So as a customer takes something off your shelf, you're pulling inventory to replace that through your organization. VSM stands for value stream mapping. This is how we are going to visualize the process we're looking to improve. We're going to show some examples of that in a little bit. Kaizen is the Japanese word for continuous improvement, and lean is all about continuous improvement. As you finish and remove waste and improve a process, you will now expose the next layer where you need to improve. Part of lean also is for setup reduction, and this whole lean process, as I mentioned earlier, is an iterative process. So here's Geoff's 9 steps to lean success. And it starts in this manner. First, we educate, then we create some lean teams, and then we start off something simple with 5S to get the organization moving on our cultural towards a lean-based thinking. Then we do some value stream mapping of the current process. Then we brainstorm how we can improve that process. Then we improve that process or make those changes. We look at that process and the changes that we've made and see if we need to adjust it. And then we communicate our success to the organization, and then we can talk about rewarding the team in some manner. And again, this is an iterative process, so you would basically start back up at number 4 again and go through this process endlessly. So let's go through these steps rather quickly. The first thing we want to talk about is employee education. You need to start off at this point. The first education is to educate the management team and the senior. If you do not have management buy-in from the top, we know it will fail. I'm sure most of you working in your professional careers have found that if the management team does not walk the walk, but it talks the talk, it's not going to be successful. So it's absolutely imperative that management has buy-in and that they have the first level of training. In my practical work experience, I can tell right off the bat if management is going to be an obstacle or not. And I address that immediately because it will be doomed to fail if we can't get management behind us. The second part of education is to look for key employees, or what we call facilitators. These are people that have the right personality, the right culture, the right respect, and in some cases they've been with the organization for a period of time and know many of the processes and employees. The third level of training is to create lean implementation teams. These teams receive a little bit more in-depth training, including value stream mapping and some of the other tools. And the fourth layer of education is for all employees. It's very critical as an organization starts to move to organizational change and towards lean or whatever organizational change you're looking for, to keep all the employees involved and informed in some manner or way. This roadmap, the Lean Transformation Roadmap, is basically right out of the APICS Lean Enterprise series. I have used this Lean roadmap successfully for organizations, most notably a Fortune 50 organization called General Dynamics. We went in there and created well over 80 lean teams, and we went through a training process once a week for about 2 to 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, we saw significant payback on the training. And part of the training, as we led through this roadmap, from the introduction to lean culture, to mapping, to stability, to just in time, to measuring, and then sustaining, and then creating that process all over again. Typically in the training, what we do is we have small groups work together and they create a small project based on part of a process they're involved in. And then they utilize that project as they're going through the training. And then we've done that very, very successfully. The second step is to create lean teams. The optimum size of lean teams is usually between 3 and 7 members. If you get too many members, it's much less effective. And if you have too few members, you won't have a good base of ideas and coming from a variety of different people. The lean teams, you want them to be outside of their normal business environment. So they don't necessarily have to be in a conference room, but we want them to step away so that they can really put their minds to what is at hand. Part of the lean team, you want to have someone in that team or several people on that team that are immediate stakeholders of the operation. They know the operation inside and out. I always like to include someone from accounting and human resources. And people say, well, why? Well, to be honest with you, some of the most best ideas for changing a process come from those that are not involved in it. And lastly, I like to include the largest or biggest skeptic of the organization. Why? Because once they're on board and you look for that easy win, he ends up being a proponent for you. And he will be able, you won't have to deal with that obstacle. That will actually be part of your ammunition to move forward with lean success. The third step with an organization looking to implement lean is I like to choose something simple, an easy win, so to speak. And I usually have them embark on the 5 S's. These 5 S's are sort, simplify, scrub, standardize, and sustain. So this 5 S's is the basis of the Japanese quality. And if you walk into many organizations nowadays, I've probably been on more than well over 100 factory tours, I see that many organizations use this 5S. And it's a very good starting point for the lean journey and to get the culture changed in the organization. Step number 4 is value stream mapping. Typically what I like to do is to do this as part of the education and 5S, shortly after sorting. All right? So we do that value stream mapping and we use it as an opportunity to educate. When we are training people in moving along the lean journey, and we have a variety of lean teams, I ask, or I'll make sure that they start with an easy win. Many processes can have a lot of stakeholders and a lot of activities. So what we want to do is normally look for some small piece of that process and look to improve that. Get an easy win, and then it will be like a snowball running down a hill, gaining size and diameter. The key thing we mentioned is about value stream mapping. And why do you want to have a value stream map? It's critical to be able to visualize the flow of the entire value system. The value stream map will provide a medium for this to occur. It helps the team to see where the waste lies and to help to develop a process to eliminate it. It also shows the linkage between our material and information flows. It also helps us visualize where to implement Kaizen events and aids in developing an action item list of improvements. So we'll take a quick peek at a sample value stream map. The key things to take out of this is there are 3 distinct areas in a value stream map. At the top, we have the information flow. And all of these squares and figures and arrows tell us a little bit something. We have a supplier and a retailer. We have our production schedule in between, which creates production schedules and it sends them off to our process, our manufacturing processes. And we also sending purchase orders to suppliers and getting forecasts from retailers. And this squiggly arrow means it's done electronically. Our second layer in the value stream map is our material flow. and it shows it going from one process, from paint, to another process assembly, to another process shipping. These large arrows tell us the beginning of a process where inventory is coming into the process. These triangles in the middle, these are indicative of where inventory resides, inventory stocking locations, and tells us how much is there. The bottom half of the value stream mass tells us about our process data. It will tell us our cycle time, our changeover, and the number of shifts we're running. With all this information together, it can tell us the whole value stream. So this is a much more of an improvement over our typical flow diagrams that were used in the past 20 or 30 years. Here's an example of a value stream map. And again, we have the top where our information resides. We have the middle, which is our material processes. And on the bottom, we have our process data. The one thing the last value stream map did not show is our timeline. And this is very important. It basically tells us along each step of this value stream map and each of the activities how long they take. So it takes 5 days, but the process itself only takes 90 seconds. Then it's 4 more days to the next process, which only takes 75 seconds. 5 days to the next process, which takes 180 seconds, so forth, and so on. And ideally, what you sum it up, and our lead time is 80 days, but our processing time is only 615 seconds. Right away, I can see there's a lot of waste embedded in lead time there. If we can somehow find better ways to do it and streamline this and implement flow and some of the other key lean concepts, we can immediately improve this value stream. So let's move on to our next step, which is step number 5. So we've looked at the organization and the teams. They've looked at a part of the process. Now they're looking to improve it. Again, put them outside of the normal business environment, off the factory floor, put them in a conference room, and get them all together and have them brainstorm. And the key concept here is that there is no bad ideas. All ideas make it to the board or the whiteboard. Everyone on the team is considered equals. And we're only looking at non-value added steps only. In other words, we want to try to eliminate them wherever possible. And while doing so, as you're eliminating the non-value added steps, we're also going to be focusing on improving the flow of production. That was step number 5. Step number 6 is to create the new value stream mapping process. So you're basically designing it and then starting to thinking about implementing it. In doing so, you really want to pull all the stops out. Try to be creative. You can modify the flow of production if needed. And I've had some pushback from organizations that say, oh no, we've been doing it this way for 30 or 40 years. So basically we can get through that obstacle or that challenge by making sure we start this new process implementation on a small product line or a piece of the production process. If you have 5 cells working on the same product and same process, change one of the cells first, prove it, and then move on to the next one. So part of this value stream mapping, the new process, is you're also going to want to create some standard operating procedures. This is for the employees and the workers that are going to be deeply involved in the process. And part of this whole lean concept is training the employees and cross-training them. The more skilled your workforce is, the more flexible and nimble it can become. Here's an example where we took a value stream map, an old process, and where you see the red is where they've looked to improve the process. They've eliminated some weekly schedules, they eliminated some stocking. We basically moved our lead time. If you look at the bottom right-hand section, we removed our lead time from being 60 days down to 26 days, and our processing time down to 615 seconds, down to 80. I can't read that, but we certainly reduced it considerably. Excuse me. So here is an example, key example of where the process has been improved in identifying the future state. The seventh step is once you've implemented this in a pilot program or in a product line, you might have to adjust the process. This is very common. Sometimes what you think is going to happen on a drawing board doesn't happen in real life. There might be some other obstacles you have to overcome. So you might have to adjust the process. Additionally, as you move towards lean, our typical performance metrics may not be accurate or may not be telling you the whole story. So you may need to develop some new performance metrics. And, of course, always adjust the process flow as needed. Always looking to continue to improve the process flow and move towards a one-piece flow. Step number 8, very important, is to make sure you tell the organization the lean tail that you just had. Make sure you find a way to communicate very effectively to the organization, to top management, through middle management, right down to the production workers. You want to basically tell them also what has occurred. What was the process beforehand, and how did you improve it, and what does it look like afterwards? Provide some metrics so that they can understand that. As you're relaying to the organization the tail of your lean journey, make sure that you tell them the successes as well as the failures, because you want everyone in the organization to understand that you can improve. You can be successful, but also make sure that you're learning from your failures. And most, in fact, all organizations should have a lessons learned. Anytime you have a Kaizen event or a lean improvement team, make sure that the last thing that they do is to create a lessons learned. This can be congregated with all the other lessons learned, and the new teams that come on board can review these lessons learned before they start on their lean journey. They can learn from other people's mistakes and successes. Step number 9 is to reward the team. Now, typically management doesn't like to give away money and things of that nature, but it can be something very simple, such as vacation days. You can give them free lunches or free gift cards. In many instances, giving an employee something small can go a long way. I always, as a manager and even as an employee, always like to get the good old attaboy now and then. Sometimes you can give an organization or employees money. I've always been a big advocate of profit sharing with organizations. And I remember back in the late 80s, yes, I'm that old, the late 80s, when we had just started off on what they call just-in-time manufacturing, which is a key component of lean, our organization moved culturally towards this change. And what we did is we offered the employees on the team 5% of any savings that were documented after a certain period of time. And it was amazing how many people were itching to get on lean or just-in-time improvement teams after they saw the benefits to the organization. And the key thing about rewarding the team and being part of the team is to have fun with lean. It's pretty exciting when you can look at a process, improve it, implement it, and then show the organization and your peers and your coworkers what you've done. It's a lot of fun. It really is. So, in conclusion, lean can be very easy. As I've just gone through Geoff's 9 steps to lean success, none of that is very difficult. Additionally, what you want to do is let success build success. Make sure you communicate your successes to the whole organization and to all the shareholders and stockholders. Lean is always a learning experience. You will learn something new from every lean improvement project team that you're on. As I continue on my lean journey, I'm always learning something new. In an organization that embarks on lean, please make sure that you're going to involve everyone. This includes senior management right down to the sanitation engineer. And everybody is going to win with lean. This presentation was not meant to be a comprehensive lesson about lean. But again, I like to simplify many of the things I'm involved with and to show you how easy it is. So what I'm going to ask you as individuals is, how can lean affect you? So here is an example. It was our first project from an organization maybe about 10 to 12 years ago. It was an old family-run organization, about 120 years old, privately held. So change was very difficult for them. And as I mentioned, I created a small lean team, about 6 people. I had the VP of HR. I had the biggest skeptic from the production floor join us. And this whole process was the maintenance, repair, and operating procurement process. So if someone wanted to go out and buy a pen or a notepad or oil or something new for the organization, this top part of this chart is what the process looked like at the beginning. And through our improvement team, in less than 2 months, if you look at all the shaded parts at the bottom part of this chart, everything that's shaded was eliminated. We streamlined the process. It was projected from this maintenance, repair, and operating supplies procurement process that over several $1 million is being saved yearly based on man hours and the efficiency of the new process. This was basically the first step for the organization. So I picked the skeptics, I picked some key process people, and it was an easy win for us. I knew it was a wasteful process, and afterwards it was very easy to create additional lean teams and move forward with the lean journey. So I hope out of this presentation you can come back and do a little soul searching and say, how does lean affect you? And what I can tell you from early on in my career, I started cooking as a dishwasher when I was 14 and started cooking before I was 15. And I was a shift manager at a restaurant by the time I was 16, managing a restaurant, and eventually a chef by the time I was 21. And I look at everything that I've done in lean, and I honestly believe I was utilizing a lot of these concepts back when I was a chef. And as you think about it, a chef is trying to get a variety of different processes and culinary pieces together, all served hot at one time. So in doing so, I improved my ability to create meals, hot meals, from a variety of different ingredients, all to come together at the right appropriate time. So that's how lean affects me personally. Professionally, I can tell you all from being a hiring manager for the last 15 or 20 years that I want employees that are thinking employees, that are always looking to improve. So those are the ones that I want to hire. So if you want to get ahead, look, you do not have to be part of a lean team. You can take a piece of your own little process and look to improve that. Bring it to your manager. Show them how easy it will be. And most importantly is document your success. Document how many hours of labor you're saving. These will all help you move forward professionally. And hopefully you can take away from some of the ideas in today's presentation about how this can help you personally. And I can promise you it will help you create a competitive advantage both professionally and personally. So that ends today's presentation, and I think at this point we'd like to entertain some questions and answers.
Thanks, Geoff. Great stuff. To our audience, I've got about 12:38. We're going to take the next 10, 15 minutes or so to pose questions to Geoff. This is one of the most valuable portions of our webinars, to interact live with someone that's been there and done it. So we've got a couple questions teed up, but again, to our audience, if you'd like to pose a question, if you would use the chat toolbar, and then I'll pose that to Geoff. So Geoff, our first question comes from Thomas, and Thomas asks, what are some of the major obstacles that you've encountered with lean implementations?
Well, there are a variety of obstacles you can have, and I don't really like the word obstacle. I like to look at them as challenges, because there's no obstacle that can't be eliminated. So we look at these challenges. Some of the largest challenges I've had with organizations, and I may have alluded to this earlier, is top management. And I know right out of the gate that we need top management support if it's going to be successful. And many of the simplistic ideas that I provided for you in this webinar will help you get through some of these road barriers. Another one is to include a skeptic. That's very critical. I learned that earlier on. If I didn't include a skeptic on that lean team, improvement team, that it was going to have a challenge implementing that change on the production floor or implementing that change in procurement or whatever the case may be. So historically, again, those seem to be the largest obstacles that you can have. Another obstacle that you might have is an organization not wanting to change a process that they've been utilizing for quite some time. So again, pick a pilot cell or a small piece of the product line and prove that it works there, and then roll it out to something larger.
So the most dangerous phrase known in business is, but we've always done it this way, right, Geoff?
You've got that right.
All right, good question. Thank you, Thomas. Our next question, Geoff, comes from Tamika. With an organization starting on the lean journey, what are a few things you can do to get a good start?
The few things you can do to get a good start, first of all, you have to educate them at some level. And then pick, as I mentioned, an easy win. Take a small piece of a process, something that you know is going to be a quick win in a month or two, that it's not going to be a very large process. When I was working as a consultant for General Dynamics and we were implementing lean up there, we were doing it to the procurement people, to a lot of middle and senior level managers. And when they came up with their little project plans, some of them were looking at these very large processes with many handoffs. And we basically culled that back down and wanted them to get a small piece of their process, get that easy win, and then move on to success after success. As I mentioned, one of the first things an organization would like to do, and when I go in there, is I like them to do the 5 S's. That helps them start moving culturally towards this lean thinking. And those are just a couple, and certainly there are many more beyond that, but those are some of the largest things that I do, or the key things I do to start off an organization on the lean journey.
Okay, great question, Tamika. Next question, Geoff, is a good one as well, and it comes from Ray. This is Ray Z, he says, hello, Geoff. Do you have a different approach for a rollout in a small organization versus a large corporation?
Not really. Believe it or not, it's still very simplistic. I like to keep the team small, and again, the skeptics. So to make it very simple, I don't really change it from a lean team perspective. The educating can be a little bit more challenging, and I think you have to determine how you're going to communicate with the different levels of employees a little bit more. It could be a little bit more challenging there. But generally speaking, large organization, small organization, Geoff's 9 steps to lean success will work.
Great question, Ray. Appreciate your insight there, Geoff. I got another tough question here from Anthony, Geoff. Anthony asks, if you eliminate waste and the time it takes to process an order, a given staff can process the same number of orders in a shorter time. Assuming you're not using overtime to meet current demand, and unless you anticipate an increase in orders, management will expect a headcount reduction. How do you get workers to participate in a project that might eliminate their job? Tough question.
Tough question, but if you read the Toyota manufacturing system, the one thing that is guaranteed in the house of Toyota is that employees will not be let go, that the organization will provide a healthy, safe work environment for them. If, and as we know, with the lean journey, you will have efficiencies that are created. This allows the organization and the additional hours for training, for more improvement, and hopefully as you create a competitive advantage, you'll have a very highly skilled workforce that will be available for new product lines, or new products or new product development. So there is a commitment on this lean journey that many of the typical metrics that have been employed by organizations for the last 50 or 100 years, many of those metrics go out the door. So there has to be that commitment that as an organization becomes more efficient and lean, that it also becomes more nimble and flexible. And flexible and nimble also may require you to have some excess capacity and the ability to meet spiking demands and lower demand periods. So yes, it is a challenge, but it has to be a commitment that's going to be driven from the top management down.
And great question, great answer, and that was Tony. I misspoke there. That was Tony. Thanks for the question, Tony. I would just add to that, especially say in a manufacturing environment, if you can free up capacity and work in conjunction with your sales team, they've got more product to sell, more capacity to sell. So if you do it the right way, it'll help grow the organization. And rather than talking about eliminating jobs, if lean is applied successfully and effectively, it's about growing jobs. So great question though, Tony. And I think Geoff would agree with me that a lot of organizations will cut jobs in the name of lean, and that's not true lean thinking. Okay. Correct. Yeah, thank you, Geoff. Great question. Next question comes from Rick. Rick asks, how do you keep upper management engaged if there are some setbacks?
Well, again, that's part of the challenges that we always have, but as you're communicating successes, you also are communicating failures and showing how that you're learning from those failures. So I've been a large advocate always. I'm not afraid of my employees making mistakes. All right. Organizations typically can get ahead by taking risks. If you don't take risks, the organization's never going to move ahead. So if you make a mistake, it's okay. But please do me a favor, never make the same mistake twice. The other piece about keeping management engaged all has to do with the benefits. There are stakeholders and shareholders, all that are going to benefit. And it's the big picture that we're looking at. It's not the little pieces of failures here, the little successes here, but when you put it all together, how has the organization changed? How have they created a more competitive organization? Are they more flexible? Are they more nimble? Some of these metrics that we've looked at cannot be quantified in dollars. So again, the key thing is to keep management engaged, keep them involved in the communications, keep them involved in the lean process. It is very common for me to include executives in the lean teams themselves. They have to be an active participant. In doing so, they don't become the obstacle, they become the facilitator.
Great question, Rick. And Geoff, what would you add when it comes to setting the right, accurate expectations on the front end? Rather than promising golden streets and nothing but rainbows and easy times ahead, how important is it how important to the process and keeping the engagement of upper management is setting accurate expectations?
Well, it's very important. And part of the expectation has to be it's a lean journey that doesn't happen overnight. It's a cultural shift of the organization that can take usually at a minimum 1.5 to 5 years for an organization to have that truly lean cultural shift. So certainly, yes, it's a challenge. Set the expectations realistic. Go for the easy wins up front so that you create that small snowball at the top of the hill. And as you create your second and third waves of lean teams, that snowball is getting larger and larger as it's coming down the hill.
Terrific. I want to pose a question to you, Geoff. Something you touched on earlier, you mentioned kind of the all equals approach in the room and mindset. How important is a good sense of humility and a good working servant leadership type approach? How critical are those aspects to continuous improvement?
It is. It really is. In most of the organizations I've worked with, many of the senior managers and middle managers, they're very humble people. But you're right. Occasionally you get someone that's embedded in the old school, and it has happened on a few occasions where I've had to take them aside and tell them not to let their A personality run the meeting, and that it's all about being equals. So yeah, it's a challenge, but setting those expectations up front and keeping the metrics and communication through the organization will help alleviate many of those challenges.
Terrific. I heard a phrase a while back. You want to conduct improvement not to an organization, but with the organization. Folks are much more receptive if they feel part of the process. So I think that's where that healthy, humble mindset really comes into play. Well, terrific. Well, that brings us to a close for the Q&A portion of today's webinar. Geoff, really want to tell you how much we appreciate you sharing your perspective, especially this busy time of year. Very valuable, very practical. I think regardless of the industry you're in, I think there's something for everybody in this presentation. So thanks for your time. We're going to be concluding our session on a couple of final items. First, the PDF version of the presentation and the recording will go out to each registrant. So if you registered for today's session, you're going to get the recording in the PDF. You can also find the recording as a podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud in the next few days. These recordings will be located on the Supply Chain Now radio channel. Today's session marked the final webinar of the year for Supply Chain Now Radio in the APICS Southeast District. We're currently planning 2018 and we'll be sharing more details very soon. For those of you that currently serve as an APICS volunteer leader, we hope that you consider joining us in Savannah in March 2018 for the next APICS Southeast District meeting. In addition to a couple of days of networking and leadership development, we're also going to be touring the Georgia Ports Authority and Gulfstream. This event is hosted by our new APICS Savannah chapter, which is led by the one and only Geoff LeRoy. So we invite you to come learn what the fuss is all about in the ever-expanding logistics market of Savannah, Georgia. You can find more information on this event and all the other district events at apicssoutheast.org. Finally, we'd welcome you to join our APICS community. Again, please learn more at apix.org. As always, feel free to reach out to me if there's anything we can do to serve as a resource for you and your organization. Hey, Geoff, before we conclude today's session, any final thoughts on your end?
You know, taking it in the context of the lean, and I know lean is for everyone, personally and professionally, and managers want thinking employees, so always look to improve the processes you're involved with. Sometimes we all get caught up with the little intricacies of the day-to-day activities, but please make sure you have a little bit of time to sit back, look at the big picture, and find ways to improve personally, professionally, and everybody's going to win in that process. So thank you, Scott. Thanks, everyone, for attending the webinar. I appreciate it.
You bet. Always an opportunity. So as we wrap up today, we'd like to give a big thanks to our guest speaker, Geoff LeRoy, for his presentation and helpful perspective. Of course, a big thank you to our audience for participating. On behalf of Supply Chain Now Radio and the APICS Southeast District, this is Scott Luton, concluding today's episode and wishing you and your families a very happy holiday season and Merry Christmas. We hope to reconnect with you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.